This is John with the Major League Baseball Playoff Race Update for Saturday, September 30th. Calculations are from the free tool at playoffcomputer.appspot.com, where you can analyze the drama in your own fantasy or other league. And warning, even with just 2 or 2.5 days left, things are almost insane with the number of scenarios that could still happen. I will try to go through them all for both just Saturday and the entire weekend. Buckle up. Here is the overview of the American League. Still 3 spots remain, which is crazy for the last weekend. The Blue Jays took care of the Rays on Friday and now have the highest mathematical odds to go to the playoffs of the remaining contenders at 95%. The Rangers didn't bring any batters or pitchers apparently to the ballpark and got routed by the Mariners, but they still have a 90% chance to make the playoffs and a 68% chance to win the division. The Astros beat the Diamondbacks, which was huge, and now gives them an 81% chance to make the playoffs and 18% to win the division. The Mariners, with that big victory over the Rangers, improved their chances to win the division, but actually saw their odds to make the playoffs drop due to the Astros win. Here's a quick recap before we get to each team's storyline. The Blue Jays and Rangers are still comfortable, but the Rangers got to be feeling the heat now. Blue Jays have 2 left versus the Rays. Astros have 2 left at Arizona. And of course, the Rangers and Mariners will battle it out twice more. So if we just concentrate on Saturday, it is fairly simple. The Rangers clinched the division with a win and an Astros loss. They just need the win part to clinch the playoff spot. The Astros can also just win and get a playoff spot. The Blue Jays have 2 options to go to the ball, win or have the Mariners lose. And now, to make it complicated and make your head hurt as much as mine, I've been looking at this for a while, and even with computer help, it is complex. I'll go team by team and list what all their scenarios are for the weekend. The Rangers, to win the division, have several paths. First, 1 more win and 1 more Houston loss. That would give them more wins than the Astros and Mariners. Next, if they win out, again, more wins than the others. Finally, to win the division, if Houston loses out, then at worst they tie with the Mariners and they still own the head-to-head tiebreaker. Now for their playoff chances, they have an assortment of ways to accomplish that. They just need to win 1 more. As with this first scenario, they would have more wins than Seattle or Houston. Now, part of the fun of organizing this is that we'll get to the scenarios with Houston finishing with other than 89 wins later. So bear with me if you notice I was just showing the Astros with a predisposed figure. But moving on, the Rangers go to the playoffs if the Blue Jays lose out. As under this scenario, they would tie with Houston and Toronto for the last 2 spots, as Seattle would win the division, which they would lose to Houston at first, but then on the second go-around with the Blue Jays, they would win the tiebreaker for the last spot. Next, if the Astros lose out, then it is simple. The Rangers would have more wins than them no matter what. Now, here's where it gets crazy. One of the Rangers' paths is for Houston to win out. If that happens, and none of the other possibilities listed happen, Houston wins the division, Toronto gets the second wild card, and the Rangers beat the Mariners in the head-to-head tiebreaker for the last spot. The only way the Rangers can be eliminated is to lose out, have the Astros go exactly 1-1, and have the Blue Jays win 1. In this case, they lose the head-to-head tiebreaker against the Astros. Are you still with me? Let's move on. The Astros will clinch the division if they win out and the Rangers lose 1. They at worst would tie with the Rangers and win the head-to-head tiebreaker. The Astros can clinch a playoff spot via a couple different ways. 1 more win and one of the other scenarios not happening at worst would have them tied with the Rangers for the last spot and they win the head-to-head tiebreaker. And if Seattle loses out, then they would simply have more wins than Seattle. They end up being eliminated if they lose out and Seattle wins one, because at best they would tie with the Mariners and lose the head-to-head tiebreaker for the last spot. Okay, Mariners clinch the division if they win out and the Astros go 1-1. This would have everybody there tied at 89, and Seattle wins the division record tiebreaker. They have a couple paths remaining to just get a playoff spot. If they get one more win and the Astros lose out, at worst they would tie with the Astros for the last spot and win the head-to-head tiebreaker. If they win out and the Blue Jays lose out, it doesn't matter what the Astros do, they would tie with the Rangers and Blue Jays at worst, lose the first tiebreaker to the Rangers, but then win the division record tiebreaker with the Blue Jays. Crazy. So they are eliminated if they lose one and Houston wins one, or they lose out, as both of those they wouldn't have enough wins, or if Houston wins out and Toronto wins one more, they would tie with the Rangers for the last spot and lose on the tiebreaker. Lastly, in the AL, the Blue Jays just need one more win, one more Mariners loss, or have the Astros lose out, is they would have more wins than one of those others. They get eliminated by losing out and the Mariners winning out and the Astros winning one, is as they would end up either tied with the Rangers and Mariners or with the Rangers and Astros, and they lose out on the head-to-head tiebreaker in either scenario. Now we can move on over to the National League, where things are almost as complicated. Here's the overview. The Diamondbacks lost a close one to the Astros, but are still in good shape with a 95% probability. The Marlins beat the Pirates to get up to a 94% chance. The Reds demolished the Cardinals to preserve some hope, just 7% odds. And the Cubs did what the Cubs have often done, choked, lost to the Brewers, and now are on the edge of the cliff with a mere 2% chance. Incidentally, the Padres were eliminated with the Marlins win. Here briefly is everybody's remaining schedule. Diamondbacks have 2 left against the Astros, Marlins 2 left against the Pirates, and then maybe that suspended game with the Mets. The Reds have 2 left with the Cardinals, and the Cubs have 2 left against the Brewers. For Saturday, if we want to keep it simple, we just can worry about these scenarios. The Diamondbacks clinch a spot with a win or a Reds loss. The Marlins clinch a spot with a win or both the Cubs and Reds losing. And conversely, the Cubs are eliminated with a loss or a Marlins win, and the Reds are eliminated with a loss or both the Marlins and Diamondbacks winning. Keep in mind, the Marlins have that suspended game in which they're winning in the 9th inning. That's going to come up several times now. Now, to make it complex again and look at the complete weekend picture for everybody, Diamondbacks have several paths. The easiest, win one more game. That would give them more wins than the Cubs and the Reds. Next, one more Reds loss would mean at worst they tie with the Cubs for the last spot and win the head tiebreaker. Next, the fun one, they clinch if the Cubs win out. This is because they simply crushed the Cubs during the regular season. So in this scenario, inviting them into what would be a tie amongst the Diamondbacks and the Reds lets Arizona win the head-to-head tiebreaker. Finally, if the Marlins somehow lose out and the other things didn't happen, they would end up with more wins than the Marlins and Cubs. They are eliminated if they lose out and the Reds win out and the Cubs lose one game and the Marlins win one. In this case, at best, they would tie with either the Reds or the Reds and Marlins and lose the head-to-head tiebreaker. For the Marlins, fairly simple. One more win is the easiest path, but is the longest to pencil out. Either they end up with more wins than the Reds or Cubs, or tie with the Cubs and win the tiebreaker, or tie with the Reds and win the division record tiebreaker, or tie with both the Cubs and Reds and win the head-to-head tiebreaker, or tie with the Diamondbacks and Cubs and win the tiebreaker, or tie with the Diamondbacks and Reds and win the tiebreaker. Absent that, one more loss by both the Reds and Cubs accomplishes the same thing as whatever I just said. The Marlins are eliminated if they lose out and the Cubs win out, or if they lose out and the Reds win out. Once again, they have that suspended game that they are currently winning in the ninth inning, so they should be fairly safe from either of those happening. As for the Reds, they need to win out and have one of the following occur. Either the Marlins lose out, in which case they would tie with either the Cubs or the Cubs and Diamondbacks, and they win the head-to-head tiebreaker against those. Or they could win out and make it in if the Diamondbacks lose out and the Cubs lose one. In this case, they would either be tied with the Diamondbacks or both the Diamondbacks and Marlins and win the head-to-head tiebreaker. The Reds are eliminated with one more loss, as they would end up tied with just the Marlins, in which case they lose the division tiebreaker, or with the Marlins and Cubs and they lose the head-to-head tiebreaker. They also are eliminated by one more win by either the Marlins or Diamondbacks, as at best the same thing happens. The last one is if the Marlins win one more and the Cubs win out, in which case they would end up tied with everybody, in which case the Diamondbacks win the first round of tiebreaker, or be tied with the Marlins and Cubs, which again they lose. Next up, and lastly, the Cubs. Well, they've made it difficult on themselves. They need to win out and have the Marlins lose out, including that suspended game, and have the Reds lose one. That would give them more wins than the Marlins and Reds, which is their only path. They are eliminated with one more loss, one more Marlins win, or the Reds winning out, as they lose out to everybody in the tiebreaker department. Well, that was fun. Again, my site is playoffcomputer.appspot.com. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. If you want to encourage me, there's a couple options on the site to do so. Enjoy your day.